Have you ever wondered what would happen if Emperor Mark was reborn right after the Invincible War with all of his memories and all of his powers completely intact? 500 years of strength, 500 years of knowledge, in a teenager's body hours before Conquest lands. Most people think the answer is obvious. He stops the fight, saves everyone, fixes everything. But here's the question nobody is asking. What if Emperor Mark wakes up, looks at everything he could change, and decides not to? Not because he can't, because he's spent 500 years learning something that nobody around him understands yet. Saving everyone isn't always the same thing as protecting them, and the next few hours are going to force him to decide which one actually matters more. So, as Emperor Mark opens his eyes, the first thing he would feel is the power, all of it. 500 years of strength sitting in a teenager's body, surrounded by smoke and wreckage. He would stand up slowly, look around at the destroyed city, and immediately know exactly where he is in the timeline. Invincible War just ended. Conquest is hours away. In the original timeline, young Mark barely survived what came next. Eve nearly died. Oliver lost his arm, and Mark crossed a line about killing he never fully came back from. Emperor Mark has spent 500 years carrying all three of those moments. So the obvious move is clear: go stop it, use the power, save everyone. But Emperor Mark wouldn't move immediately. He would just stand in the rubble and think. Because here is the thing about 500 years of ruling an empire built on loss. You learn something that nobody who hasn't lived it can understand. The people you love don't become who they need to be despite what hurts them. They become who they need to be because of it. Eve's near death in the Conquest fight is what unlocks the full scope of her powers. The moment she discovers she's immortal, the version of Eve who stands beside him for 5 centuries, that Eve is born in that specific terrible moment. Oliver losing his arm is what hardens him into the warrior the Viltrumite War eventually requires. And the line Mark crosses about killing, as dark as it is what builds the ruthlessness that leadership eventually demands. Emperor Mark is the man built from all 3 of those costs. So he stands in the rubble and asks himself the question he came back to answer. Was it worth it? He would spend exactly 11 minutes thinking about it. Then he would start moving, not to stop everything, to change the shape of what it costs. Because here is what Emperor Mark understands that nobody else in this scenario ever gets to understand. He doesn't have to prevent the pain. He just has to make sure it doesn't take more than it needs to. Eve nearly dies. In the original timeline, she gets there because she throws herself into a fight she isn't ready for, because nobody warned her how dangerous Conquest actually was. Emperor Mark would find her, look at her, and say 3 words. Stay back today. She would look at him strangely, ask why. He wouldn't explain. He would just hold her gaze until she understood that this wasn't a request. She would agree, and that one conversation would be the difference between nearly dying and not dying at all. Eve still doesn't fight, which means Eve still doesn't have her near-death moment, which means the question of whether she discovers her immortality a different way, that question stays open. Emperor Mark knows this. He chooses it anyway, because half of protecting someone is deciding which versions of their pain you're willing to watch, and he cannot watch her die again, not even technically, not even briefly, not again. And then Conquest would land. No warning, no dramatic entrance. He would just appear, dropping out of the sky like gravity was something that happened to other people. He would look across the wreckage at the young man standing there, take in the destroyed city, the smoke, the bodies everywhere, and smile. Because this looked exactly like what he was told. A young half-breed, exhausted, easy. He would start his speech. Duty, the empire. What happens to half-breeds who forget which side of the line they stand on? He would get 2 sentences in, and Mark would say, quietly, almost bored, "I killed you once, in space. You were disemboweling me at the time. Neither of us was at our best." Conquest would go completely still. 5,000 years of warfare. Not one opponent had ever said that to him before a fight. He would charge anyway, because that's what Conquest does. Now here's what nobody watching would understand. Emperor Mark could end this in 30 seconds. Every weakness, every pattern, every tell Conquest has built up across 5,000 years of never needing to hide them. But he wouldn't end it fast, because Thragg is watching. And if Thragg sees a teenager dismantle his most feared warrior in 30 seconds, he doesn't file it away as a problem to deal with later. He comes himself, immediately, before anything is ready. So Emperor Mark would perform. Take hits he doesn't have to take. Make the fight look close. Make it look like a hard-won victory by a limited young hero who got lucky on the right day, not a god who never broke a sweat. When Conquest goes down, Eve is safe. The city is lighter than it was supposed to be, and Mark would stand over the unconscious body of the man he's killed once before, and feel something he didn't expect. Nothing. Not relief, not satisfaction, not the complicated grief that came with it the first time, just nothing, which is how he knows the 500 years actually happened. In the original timeline, after this fight, young Mark would make a decision. He would look at what Conquest did to Eve, what he did to Oliver, what the fight cost, and he would decide that protecting people sometimes means ending threats permanently. No more mercy. That decision changed everything about who young Mark became. Emperor Mark wouldn't make it today, not because he disagrees with it. He made the same decision himself 500 years ago, and it built him into something the Viltrum Empire would actually follow. But young Mark doesn't need to make it today, because Emperor Mark already carries it for him. He would stand there in the wreckage, look at the unconscious Conquest, and make a different choice. He would let him live, not out of mercy, out of strategy, out of the understanding that a living Conquest going back to the Empire with a story about a young Viltrumite who barely beat him is more useful to the plan than a dead Conquest who tells Thragg nothing at all. Young Mark would have killed him. Emperor Mark leaves him breathing and walks away. Eve would come to him afterward, ask if he's okay, and Emperor Mark, and who has 500 years of loving this woman, who has watched her discover she was immortal, who has stood beside her while civilizations rose and fell, would look at her and say yes. He would lie, not because he's hurt, because he's carrying the weight of a decision he made 11 minutes after waking up in a destroyed city. He chose to let her near-death moment happen another way, chose to trust that she finds what she is supposed to find without him engineering the specific moment that was supposed to reveal it. He doesn't know if he made the right call. He won't know for decades, maybe centuries. He looks at her for one moment. She looks back, and something in her face says she knows something is different today. She can't name it, but she knows. She reaches out and takes his hand. He lets her and says nothing. Nolan is in a Viltrumite prison right now, sentenced to execution, waiting to be brought to full strength before they kill him. In the original timeline, Alan broke him out. The careful way, the long route. Emperor Mark wouldn't wait for Alan. He would go himself, tear through every guard, leave one alive, lean over him. Tell Thragg the Argol bloodline is coming home. He would leave a vial of Nolan's blood with the guard. One DNA test. That's all it takes. He would bring his father back to Earth, and that night, just the two of them. He would tell him everything, not just the bloodline, not just the war, all of it. What Nolan becomes, what it costs him to get there, the man he dies as, and how that version of him is the version worth being. Nolan would be silent for a very long time, then ask one question. Why are you telling me all of this? Mark would look at him. Because you deserve to choose it, he would say. Not stumble into it, not have it forced out of you by circumstances. Choose it, knowing what it costs. Nolan would look at his son. At this face he knows. These eyes he doesn't recognize. How old are you? He would ask quietly. Mark would almost smile. Old enough to know you make the right choice, he would say. I just want you to make it faster this time. Within 48 hours, the evidence would go public. Every senior Viltrumite, simultaneously. No warning, no way to bury it. Thragg would find out the same way everyone else does, and the Empire would fracture almost overnight. The older generations, who always had quiet doubts, would move immediately. Thragg would watch his civilization splitting in real time and understand what Mark did. He didn't just win a fight, he started a civil war inside the Empire before the Coalition even showed up. But here is the problem Emperor Mark has been quietly carrying since the moment he woke up. Oliver. Oliver doesn't lose his arm in the first Conquest fight. He loses it later, when Conquest ambushes the ship to Tayliscria, and then Thragg takes it in the final battle on Viltrum. Emperor Mark can't change that by winning today. He has to be there, in the right place, at the right moment, both times, without letting anyone understand how he knew Oliver would keep his arm. It would be the most precise thing Emperor Mark does in this entire timeline. Not the most powerful, the most precise, and the most personal. Because of all the things the original timeline took, Oliver losing that arm is the one that still sits in a specific place in his chest 500 years later. He doesn't fully understand why. He just knows he is not watching it happen again. While everything unfolds in space, something builds quietly on Earth. Robot. Emperor Mark would remove the evidence quietly. Every crisis resolved before Robot can use it. Every catastrophe handled before it becomes the justification for what Robot is building toward in the dark. When Robot makes his move, Cecil is alive. Mark is ready. The coup ends before it starts. The Viltrumite War still comes, but completely differently. The Coalition goes in prepared. The Empire is already fracturing. Nolan and Mark fight together from the beginning, and Thragg, who planned to use the bloodline secret as a weapon right before trying to kill Nolan, has nothing, because everyone already knows. He goes down, and Nolan Grayson is alive when it ends. Cecil is alive. Oliver Hole, Nolan never lost. The war won cheaper than it ever was. Emperor Mark changed almost everything. But here is what he still carries after everything settles. Eve. He watches her every day, looking for the moment, the discovery, the realization of what she actually is. Hoping it comes, not knowing when or if. Because here is what 500 years taught him that he couldn't explain to anyone who hadn't lived it. You can have all the power in the world. You can stop every fight, end every threat, position yourself at every critical moment, but you cannot know for certain which moments your absence from would have built the people you love into who they needed to be. Emperor Mark changed the shape of what it cost. He still doesn't know if he changed it right. He just knows they're alive, and that sometimes, after 500 years of learning what matters, that has to be enough. So that's what happens when Emperor Mark is reborn with all his memories and powers right before Conquest arrives. He doesn't save everyone from everything. He saves them from the things that take more than they need to take. He ends the fight on his terms, keeps the bloodline secret from being buried, frees Nolan before the execution, protects Oliver from both moments that were supposed to cost him his arm, stops Robot before the coup starts, wins the Viltrumite War alongside his father, and carries one question he still can't answer. Whether Eve becomes who she needs to be. I know without the moment he kept her away from. He won't know for decades, maybe longer, but he watches her every day, and he hopes. Now I want to hear from you. Does Emperor Mark tell Eve the truth? Everything he remembers? Every version of their life together? Or does he protect her from it the same way he protected her from Conquest? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one, and if you want to see another Invincible scenario nobody has made yet, that video is already written. You know what to do.